Good morning, and it's Scotland's Wild Medicine Joe here, live
person.
from Lochaline, and we are having an absolute ball here. Oh my god, you can hear the birds probably. The views. We had to turn the camera this way for the light, but it is just idyllic here. So it is April, and we're doing all things wild medicine. So Claire, do you want to tell us what is growing round about? What wild medicine can we get?
Yeah, so this is one of my favourite times of year for foraging and wild medicine. So we've got all the spring growth just starting to burst through here in the West Highlands. So of course, the first plant that I would always gravitate towards at this time of year is, of course, the nettle.
On the nettles.
On the nettles. And yeah, they're just at the prime for picking at the moment. So when you're picking nettles, you want to pick the top 4 to 6 leaves. Avoid the kind of woody stems.
Right.
And they're super mineral rich. They're an absolute powerhouse of nutrients. So nettles contain almost all the vitamins and minerals that we need for human health.
And they're free. Which we love.
Yes. So they're notably very high in iron, but they do contain lots of other trace elements and minerals and vitamins and things as well. So in terms of the medicine that they have an antihistamine action. They're anti-inflammatory, particularly to the joints. They help to cleanse through the kidneys. I've recently been doing my spring cleanse packs through my website, and nettle is one of the main ingredients of the spring cleanse. And they're just a fantastic food. So you can use them like spinach, or like any kind of green leafy vegetable. Just throw them into a nettle soup, or you can blanch them in hot water, squeeze the juice out, use that as a base for pasta or gnocchi, put it through bread, and just scramble some eggs and throw some nettles in. So they're really, really easy if you've got a source of nettles to get into your diet. And you can also cook them and freeze them as well. So if you want to have a supply of nettles through the year when there's not so many greens available, then you can have these little frozen nettle balls available in the
all right, that's a good idea, because I think, sorry, I'm just trying to get all these settings correct. One of the main things I think that particularly for me I'm not particularly good at is getting what's wild and fresh right now and preserving it.
Yes, yeah.
Or so that you've got it throughout the year.
Yeah.
And I think if we're looking at like the microbiome project that Monica's got going on just now, where you have to survive on wild food. And if it was back in the day when we didn't have the supermarkets, we would absolutely have to preserve and dry. Oh, hello, darling. So that you have these things, and obviously for you making medicines, I saw yesterday we had the big, the huge big jars of nettles for your tinctures. So you naturally are preserving all of that. So can you just tell us what are the easiest ways? Because when we were writing the book, and we was talking to you about this earlier, when we decided that this information had to go into a book, because we wanted to get the information out to the masses. And we wanted people to be able to lift the book and say, well, I could do that. So it had to be simple, duplicable. And so in terms of preserving, what's the easiest way to do that?
Well, it really depends what you want to use things for. I mean, there's loads of different ways of preserving. And when you're kind of growing your own food, or you're using a lot of wild foods, then you do inevitably have to preserve gluts, because things... there's certain things that are in season at various times of the year, and if you want to be able to stretch out that season and, as you say, have things to eat through the winter, then you do have to preserve. So I suppose with something like nettles, one of the easiest things to do is just to dry them. So you can do that either by just having a large kind of tray, or I use kind of wire racks that
yes,
I've made.
I saw that yesterday.
And I just lay the nettles out on the wire racks, and they they air dry, or you can use a dehydrator. So you can, obviously it's a bit of kit that you need to buy. But dehydrators, particularly in Scotland where the climate is quite damp, it's much easier to dry using a dehydrator. So you just lay things out on the trays, and it involves electricity. So yeah, drying is a very easy way to preserve your herbs. And if you go into the book, if you've got a copy of Scotland's Wild Medicine, there is actually a section on herbal preparations and how to dry herbs, how to make creams, how to make ointments. Obviously, we talked about kind of making tinctures as well. So if you want to just preserve it for use as a medicine, then just some nettles in a jar with some alcohol on top, leave it for a month, and then you've got a tincture.
Yeah, that's when I was watching you with that yesterday, I thought that's actually a really easy way as well.
Easy.
Maybe even easier than drying.
Yes.
I mean, drying
doesn't involve having as much space.
Yes, I know. And I mean, you can take the kind of rack out your grill pan, can't you, and put a few nettles on there. And if you've got a conservatory or a greenhouse, chances are it will dry it out.
It will dry it out. You're better off drying in a kind of darker place where there's not loads of direct sunlight. So, if you wanted to dry it in a conservatory or something, you'd maybe want to kind of cover it over or shade it or something like that. Because it will kind of bleach if there's direct sunlight. So you're better off drying in a kind of darker place. So a kind of warm, well ventilated dry place is the best place to dry herbs.
Some people, hi Lorna, good morning. What's the best way to pick nettles?
Yep.
I've got childhood trauma. Morning, Heather.
Fair enough. Hail the nettles from Heather. Best way to pick nettles. I mean, people talk about obviously being able to pick nettles without getting stung, and yes, it is possible. So if you look at the nettle stem, the stings come out of the stem at this kind of angle. They're also kind of on the leaves as well. So if you kind of come in from the base of the leaves, avoiding the leaf surface itself, and then pull upwards very firmly, then you will avoid being stung. But to be honest, if you're picking quite a lot of nettles, which I inevitably am, I find the best way is just to wear a pair of gloves and use scissors, and it's much quicker. There's much less risk of being stung. Some people say that you can just ask the nettles not to sting you. Personally, I've not found that a very effective method. It's like asking the midges not to bite you. It's like,
yeah.
So yeah, I think best way is just to wear gloves and use scissors.
Aye, absolutely, and I think certainly if you're going to eat them like an ordinary green, I'm just talking from my experience at the farm, really, where you take the sort of young shoots at the top and chop them up, they're a lot nicer to eat, and that, like just thrown into your scrambled eggs or wilting with a little bit of butter or whatever. If they're nice and new and fresh. Yeah. And so you're saying they're full of iron.
Yeah.
Because I know that, the allopathic system is you've got no iron, give the body iron.
Yeah.
And that's not usually how we would look at it. Is like, well, what's the reason?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk to that?
Yeah. So, if you're low in iron, it's usually not just because you're low in iron. It's usually there's a reason behind it. So anemia can occur because of, if there's a bleed somewhere in the body, if there's heavy menstrual bleeding, if somebody's, depleted, in Chinese medicine, they would call it kind of blood deficiency. So, there are many, many reasons why you can become iron deficient. And for women in particular, it tends to be a bigger issue. So obviously with iron as well, you need to look at, is your body absorbing it, and why, and if it's not absorbing it, why not? So, the reasons are many and complex for that. But you do need to make sure that you also combine iron with things like vitamin C and folate. And of course, looking at nettles, they also contain vitamin C and folate. So you do need to make sure that you're getting that kind of full complement of nutrients. And that's why plant medicine can be so much more effective than just taking supplements, because nature has provided this full package everything that you need within that one plant, or within a mixture of different plants, in order for you to absorb your nutrients better.
I know, and I mean, what's the one with that they make aspirin from?
That's so aspirin was first discovered from the plant meadowsweet. It was first synthesized from willow bark, but it's salicylic acid is the precursor for aspirin, and obviously we know what the side effects of aspirin are. So gastric ulcers, bleeding, stomach ulcers, these kind of things. And meadowsweet, the plant that it was first discovered from, actually one of its main indications is treating gastritis and stomach ulcers. So it has these compounds called tannins, which you maybe be familiar with. They're present in black tea. So the tannins actually help to buffer the effects of the salicylic acid, making the plant less likely to cause gastric problems and bleeding. So it's like Mother Nature's created this whole package.
Mother Nature.
She's
pretty smart.
More nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that blows me away with all medicines, is it's thinking that we know better than Mother Nature. I just think the arrogance of that. I'm not in, the more you learn, the more you realise you don't know, and the more incredible and awesome the body is.
Yeah.
And the more, I'm sitting out here this morning just like listening to the noise and looking and just going, I mean, how could we possibly think we know better than this?
I think it's partly the human condition, isn't it? We want to pick everything apart and understand it, and sometimes you pick everything apart and you feel like you know less. So you have to look at that whole. And there's a question there from Marion just asking if nettles are just as potent when they're dried. That's a really good question, Marion. And some herbs, because I make a lot of my tinctures from fresh plant material, because I feel like it's better for the energy of the medicine, and I also think that it's just a bit more vibrant and in terms of nutrient density. But nettles, actually, I've done this kind of little experiment where I've made a herbal tea with fresh nettles and dried nettles, and actually the colour that you get from dried nettle tea is really deep. It's really strong, and if you taste it, it feels like it feels more kind of minerally. And I think it's because when you dry the nettles, you're kind of breaking down those cell membranes and probably making those elements a bit more bioavailable. So I would say, in the case of nettles, they're incredibly potent when they're dried.
It's a concentrate, isn't it? Exactly. Yeah, I know. I
think the key thing to remember with dried herbs is the quality of your dry. So we've all been into the supermarket and bought your wee tea bags of chamomile or peppermint tea and been a bit like, this isn't very nice. And a lot of people say to me, oh, I don't really like herbal teas. And I'm like, well, have you ever actually had a proper herbal tea, not that kind of sawdust that you can buy in the supermarket? And if you get into drying your own herbs, I can assure you they will be vastly more superior to anything that you can buy in the shops. The quality of the dry that you can get is much better if you're doing it small scale by yourself. So get out there, get picking nettles.
Yeah, she's got a tea called Immunity. That's clever, isn't it? Good play on words.
I love those little words jumbles.
But yeah, I suppose you think as well about a tomato, for example, that some people can digest it way better when it's been dried or cooked. And I think, if you're looking at the chemistry per se, there's not really a right or a wrong way. There's just different ways. And that's obviously why an expert comes in that can say, well, this is probably what's going to work best for you right now. And it's that patience thing, isn't it? And how long do you spend with the plants and the herbs and pushing them through the body, swallowing them into the body so that the body gets the chance to, with that information exchange, to make the changes. I always just liken it to losing weight. You don't sort of eat healthy one day and get to your dream weight. You consistently put in the good food until the body rebalances, and healing's exactly the same, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
The patience. And it's also, I think, as well, the fact that generally speaking, you don't feel it healing.
Yeah.
Unless it's a cut or something, you might be very aware. But if you break your leg, you don't sit looking at it going, is it healing? You just know that it is.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we've decided that some things don't heal, and it's just so crazy that you would give your power away like that. Yeah, so and in terms of the wild medicine from my side, obviously what we've seen over the last month with the festivals is the dancing.
Oh yeah, dancing is amazing medicine.
It's just incredible. In Tarbert, we had Sharon Tate and I did the whole day called Supercharge Yourselves. So it was meditation and hypnotherapy, putting you into a state of receivership. And then I come in with Suk Suk Blow and the Sedona method, and then a sound bath. And then we danced at night in our bare feet on the grass. Huh?
The other dog now.
I know, you walking in the show.
It's a sorrel, everyone.
And movement is medicine. You know, it's interesting that, you know, when somebody actually said to me, what is Scotland's wild medicine? And I was like, well, I think it's obvious that the herbs and the plants and the spices and the trees and the fungi all have a medicinal, for most of us, maybe not everybody, there's a medicinal impact on the body. But we forget that singing, dancing, chanting, drumming are also having a very powerful medicinal
getting
effect.
in the wild water,
exactly,
getting your feet on the earth, all these things.
Yeah,
you know, it's just that reconnection with nature.
And where we were yesterday, I mean, I was just like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. These cliffs, the ancient forests. You know, so that
took Lily up to Harrickle to Castle Cheerham yesterday. If anybody's ever been there, it's a beautiful spot.
This whole peninsula, we went to visit the Arasig Sauna boys, James and Ian, and Rebecca and the kids, and we went round there. I've never been before. It's just absolutely spectacular, and where that castle is, I was just.
That's wild medicine for your eyes.
That exactly. Well, that's what I mean. So there's information coming in your ears, your eyes, your mouth, your skin, your heart. It's all of that, and that's what we want to do with it. Well, when we wrote the book, it was very much to get the stuff that we are absolutely passionate / obsessed about out to want to share that with people, because we know how much better it can make you feel. And then the festival is obviously a great way to learn. You get a whole kind of banquet of wild medicine and all the different healers and teachers and leaders in Scotland and beyond that can give you information that you may never need, but you might, so that you understand and know about it before you would get into a place where you're scared. So the festivals are incredible, and obviously we've got our retreat right here in Lochaline, and our next one starts on October the 30th. And so all of the wild medicines, and certainly, you know, the new information that we're getting out around the body, and particularly about heart coherence, that's my big thing just now, is getting us into coherence. And every single thing that we do, whether it's what we're eating or ingesting or putting on our skin, is really to soothe that body and help us get back into coherence. Because the nervous system, so many of us are running on adrenaline and cortisol, and so many of us, our digestive systems are quite often full of parasites, worms, fungus, mold, low-grade infections, and all of these things can be rectified, you know, with just a little bit of understanding and patience and love and time. So that's really why we do it, because we know it works, and we desperately want other people to know about it as well. So let's talk about what else. The nettles. On the nettles.
So there's a question come in there from Isabel asking about wild garlic. So she's saying that wild garlic's flowering here, wherever that is, just now.
It's up near Aberdeen, I think, aren't you?
Okay. Yeah. And she's asking how the wild garlic can be used. So it's kind of sounds like it's about the same stage here at the moment, Isabel, and I've actually got a big basket on my kitchen. Maybe I'll just go and get the props.
Yes, do. And wild garlic, the great thing about it is it's really easily recognisable. And if you don't know if it's definitely it, you just pick it up and smell it. And we like, certainly for this first book that we've done, we wanted everything to be pretty easy to recognise.
Okay.
And wild garlic is that.
Here we go. We've got a big basket of wild garlic here.
Here's one she made earlier.
Here's one I foraged earlier. So it's great actually, because I can show you a bit of the identification, because wild garlic's a very common plant, but there are a few things that you can get it confused with. So this is the leaf here. Obviously we're not on smell-o-vision, so you can't smell the wild garlic, but it does smell incredibly garlicky, and it tastes very garlicky, oniony. It's in that family, the Alliaceae, so that's the garlic and onion family. So you've got these quite long, thin stems, and then, you know, this is what's called a lanceolate leaf, which basically means it's pointy. That's a botanical term for pointy. And it's completely smooth. It's totally hairless. There's no hairs on that leaf there. And these are this is the flowers just starting. So you can see you've got this kind of cluster of star-shaped flowers, which again, you know, if you're walking through the woods at this time of year and the flowers are starting to come out, you can really, really smell the garlic as you walk through. So anything that smells garlicky and looks like that, it's likely to be wild garlic. If it doesn't smell garlicky, it could be something else. So when it's at its very young stage, there's a plant called Lords and Ladies, which is quite toxic, and it can look similar. Again, doesn't smell like garlic. There's another plant called Lily of the Valley, which in large doses can be toxic as well. Again, in its very young stages, it can look quite similar. But wild garlic, as I showed you, has this very individual kind of stem, whereas not Lords and Ladies, Lily of the Valley, I've gone through all the Latin names in my head here, having to translate, it almost kind of wraps around itself, the leaf. So when you look at them side by side, you can really see the difference. But just if you're kind of picking without thinking, then you know, definitely good to get your eye on. Lily of the Valley also has white flowers, but the wild garlic, I'll see if I can find a little bud in here. Yeah, so this is the bud of the wild garlic, and the Lily of the Valley bud, it almost looks like small individual white round balls. So it almost looks like a little white bunch of grapes rather than an entire bud. So that's your kind of identification keys for wild garlic. So what I would do with this, so this is a really good time of year to be picking it. I love this plant because it's got such a long season. So it starts coming out here kind of mid-February. You've got these really strong, pungent leaves that you can get into salads. And sometimes when you're eating them at that time of year, it's like, wow, it's so pungent. And then obviously as the leaves grow, they start to develop a bit more of a sweetness. So you get this kind of pungent sweetness. So at this time of year, this is my favourite time for making fermented wild garlic. So this is a great way to preserve your wild garlic. So if anybody's ever made sauerkraut, it's a very similar process. You're just literally picking your garlic leaves, and then you would weigh your garlic leaves, and say you've got, I don't know, a kilo of garlic, you would be using 2% of your weight of garlic as salt. So 2% of 1 kilo, maths time. 2
Google
grams. Or 20 grams, isn't it? 20 grams, yeah. So Google it, do your maths on your calculator. So basically at that point, you're just getting the salt rubbed into the garlic. You're getting all the leaves completely saturated, and you want to get it to the stage where you're almost wringing it out. You're almost kind of squeezing. You can see the liquid and the juice all coming out of the garlic, and your house will smell like garlic for about 2 days after this, and you'll be going in and out like, oh my goodness, this is wild. But it makes this absolutely delicious ferment, which, you know, you can then use as a kraut. You can add it into other things. You can even dehydrate it, and then you've got this kind of salty, sweet,
delicious
condiment to use. So that's one of my favourite things to do with it at this time of year. Obviously, you can also make your wild garlic infused oils. So just whizzing it up with some olive oil in a food processor or a blender, and
you tell them about that garlic salt.
Yeah, so the garlic salt as well. You again, just salt and garlic in your food processor, whiz it all up so that it's well chopped, and then you can put it in a very low oven to dry, or in a dehydrator if you've got a dehydrator. So that just gives you a wild garlic salt. Pesto, another great thing, and I think some of this basket is going to be destined for pesto. But let's talk about the other parts of the garlic as well. So I've showed you the bud. So these are fantastic for, again, lacto-fermenting. So you can do this with a brine. I get a 2% brine, or you can do it with just a straight pickle with either straight apple cider vinegar, or you can do the 3-2-1, which is 3 parts vinegar, 2 parts water, and 1 part salt. It just depends on your palate. Like I don't. Some people add sugar to it as well. I personally don't have a sweet tooth and don't like to add a lot of sugar to my preserves. So there's loads of different recipes for vinegar bases, but I personally just use straight apple cider vinegar and chuck the buds into that. Super simple.
I'm going to do that.
It's really nice. And then the flowers, I'll just quite often put them onto salads. We had some breakfast the other day with some soup, and we'd sprinkled the wild garlic flowers on top of that onto scrambled eggs. The flowers are actually really pungent. They're really, really spicy. Very garlicky. The other thing I do with these is just dry them straight, dehydrate them, and then I'll use that as a kind of garlic powder, and it gives almost this like slightly roasted garlic flavour because it's got the sweetness of the flowers in it. Can you tell I love this plant?
Who would have thought you could talk about wild garlic
for so long?
I mean, most people, well, in the foraging world, I was just saying that, because it is pretty easy to recognise. You just smell it and you know
exactly.
And most people can find it somewhere, and and pesto is a really simple thing to make, but also so is fermented garlic. And I'd forgotten, because remember one year you brought it to the farm and I was like,
that's right, you were sitting with a jar of it like, this is all for
delicious. And also, when we're thinking intuitively, I started using a wee bit of kinesiology to help people kind of see what they're believing around foods and plants. And obviously, when you come in the retreat, you'll do an intuitive meditation, and you'll be blown away about how much your body knows about these plants. And it's, we're not learning, we're remembering. But the intuitive, the taste that you're drawn to, the smells that you're drawn to, maybe it's even coming in your feed saying, it's like your body's saying, give me some of that. And I always talk about when we make these salads that have up to 30 to 40 different leaves and flowers in it. And anytime we make that, people just gravitate. And to me, that just means the body's like, get that.
Yeah.
And, John Angus was saying he'd made a pesto with a whole load of leaves that Andrea had taught him. And this is exact words where he said it was like eating electricity. And, you're just like, because that's actually, it's a charge, isn't it? So that life is going into the body and you can feel it, because most of our batteries are needing charge because we're cut off from nature. So,
I agree. It just feels like you're eating food that is actually alive. And obviously when you're fermenting it, you literally are eating food that's alive because it's full of microbes.
Well, exactly. As Janice says, you're taking a good food and you're making it better.
Exactly.
And cabbage and all this kind of thing. And I do appreciate it takes time. But I always say, well, buddy up with people that are making it and get them to make a wee bit more for you if you can't. And it's it can be a bit time consuming process, but find somebody who's making it and encourage them to make some for you.
And I think, thinking historically, we would always have spent a lot of time preparing food. And now, if you look at how much time we spend shopping, not much.
I know.
Grabbing things that are wrapped in plastic off the supermarket shelves. And how much time we devote to actually cooking and sitting down, as a group or a community or a family and sharing meals together. We kind of wonder why we've got so many digestive problems and cardiovascular problems and stress. And, we don't honour that kind of process of creating, preparing, nourishing, cooking and sitting down and sharing food together. I think it's such an important part of being human, is just that joy of
absolutely
food and eating,
And that's exactly, I was telling you about Jason that was talking about the clothing and the the wool, the sheep's wool, and that kind of like really truly knowing where your clothes came from, and knowing where your food comes from, and we've lost that completely. And I think when we're talking about the body as an energy field interacting with the energy field, if we're using natural products, that process happens organically and naturally. And it's really about reconnecting back into that. Plug yourself in back into nature so that you can be as charged and vibrant, as alive as you want to be.
Absolutely. There's a wee question from Pamela there, just saying what is the name of the book, which is an easy one to answer. That is Scotland's Wild Medicine.
So we've got great news about Scotland's Wild Medicine, because obviously when I met Claire, I don't know how many years ago, 10
maybe 10. 8,
and
anyway.
And I realised, and she was telling me all about the plants and the medicine and the wood wide web and the information, and I was blown away. It just really hit my heart, and I stalked her for a while and said, we need to get this information into a book.
I found it, I took it as a compliment rather than terrified me.
She never called the police. So, and then lockdown happened, and we wrote the book, and obviously my part of it, Claire's the plant expert in the medicinal sides, emotional sides, the spiritual side, the elemental side of all the medicines, and she lives here, and she grows and makes 99% of the stuff herself. And I'd never met anybody like that before. But my area, of course, is more the outside, getting into cold water and recognising the power of the elements. And it's all interconnected. There's no separation here, but we kind of pulled our passions and we created Scotland's Wild Medicine, and with our friends Ailey Cameron, the photographer, and Jane Wright, the editor. And when we were looking for a title for the book, Claire, we all were having a Zoom call, and Claire came on, she said, I think I've got the title. She said Scotland's Wild Medicine, and we were like, yes! We all knew, because we battered a few names around, and it's trying to get 4 people that felt this is the name. We knew, all of us, immediately that was the name. And then we turned it into a retreat as well, because we realised that, actually, and I found definitely with the seaweed, I knew I could eat any seaweed, but I wasn't doing it. And then we foraged the seaweed and put it into food and salads. And I was like, all right, okay, now I get it. So the coming on the retreat and really practically medicine making. And then we've turned it into festivals as well. So a much more kind of fun look at it and little snippets of how you can interact with Mother Nature to feel better. It's most simplistic. That's really what we're promoting.
And I think it's helpful sometimes if you've read about these things, or you've watched a couple of videos, or you've talked to other people about doing it, but actually having somebody guiding you through it and standing next to you and saying, this is how you ferment, get your hands in there, actually go through the process. This is how you make a tincture, or this is how you make a balm, and troubleshooting, and this could go wrong, that could go wrong, but actually going through that process with somebody who's experienced,
it's invaluable.
It can be so helpful. And I mean, that was when I was learning, that was what I found the most valuable, was going out with people that have done it before, and people that know what they're doing and that can say, yeah, that's right, or oh no, maybe you want to just try and do it like this instead. For me, that's the most valuable way of learning. So that's what we try and do on the retreats and at the festivals, is just give you that experience with people who have done it before.
And we're hoping tomorrow to have the whole team, because food's a huge part of our retreats. The food's unbelievable. You can ask anybody who's been. We have a local friend and farmer who provides some of the meat that we'll be using, and we've got another friend who's also a herbalist and an amazing chef to talk about. And Claire, also the farmer, she does massage. So we really have a very solid,
comprehensive team.
A phenomenal team to really help you feel better, and we get pretty phenomenal results. But as always, we're looking at ways to get this out to the masses. We only take 12 people on the retreat, so they're quite small and bespoke. You get your own private bedroom with your ensuite shower and toilet. So I know that's important to a lot of people. And also, if you're not used to eating the amount of vegetables and herbs that you'll get when you come to our retreat, the bowels could start to move differently.
Start having a good old detox.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, it's very exciting. And we also have a new addition, which is a sauna in Claire's garden, which is just, we were in it the other night. Oh, I just love saunas. The health benefits around saunas are just, they'll blow your mind. Access one, get one in your community. It's a social thing. It's a very pleasant thing to do. It's got enormous benefits. So that's another addition that we have. We also have the sea and a beautiful little beach.
And the view from the sauna is just down across the mouth of Lochaline and over to the Sound of Mull and the Isle of Mull beyond. So it's not a bad view.
I was just sitting here this morning with the birds, just like, oh, you just go into that coherent state. It's incredible. And obviously you'll be getting all my latest and greatest heart coherence information, and we'll be doing practices to make sure that you are able to clear as much rubbish off the hard drive as you need to create space for whatever's going to be coming and what you want to create. So have we got anything else we need to talk about?
That's probably about...
Is that enough information for...
That's probably enough information for one Friday morning.
We're going to be at the Wild Food Festival.
At Scottish Wild Food Festival. That is the weekend of the, I think, 16, 17, whatever. I think that's the dates of May. And
it's we'll be doing
it's at Tiernanog Holistic Centre, which is near Drinnan, kind of in the Trossachs. So it's quite central. It's quite easily accessible from Central Belt. And we'll be doing a stall there with copies of Scotland's Wild Medicine for sale, and we'll be doing a workshop on the Sunday afternoon on wild nutrition. So that's going to be really great if you can make it to that. It's a fantastic event, full of really like-minded people, and it's very relaxed and formal. It's lovely if you've got kids, to bring kids along to. Loads of workshops and loads of really experienced foragers. There's Katie. Hi, Katie, saying she'll see us there.
Oh, fantastic.
Katie was up here a few weeks ago at Herbal Helpers.
And she was in Tarbert at the festival. She's a wild medicine
fanatic.
Ambassador.
Nice one.
Yeah.
So we'll hopefully see some of you there at the festival.
And then we're but you're going to be teaching in Limerick in July.
Scotland's Wild Medicine in July. I think that one is full, but keep an ie out in case they get any cancellations.
I'll get on the waiting list. Then we have Aberfeldy, Scotland's Wild Medicine Festival in Aberfeldy, and then we're going to Strontian, which is not that far from here. So we've got a phenomenal year of wild medicine ahead, and we're just passionate to get this information out to you that Mother Nature's calling us home. Wake up to the power that's all around you. It's so exciting and inspiring. So anyway,
so have a look at your copies of Scotland's Wild Medicine, see what's around to forage. Look at April, look at what's around in March, and look into May as well, because our seasons, they don't always play by the rules and things change. So you can get out there with your baskets.
You could just take some photographs from the book and go out, so that, because it is a bit of an encyclopedia. Morning, Alice. So if you're watching this in replay and you've got any questions, just let us know. As I say, our next retreat starts on the 30th of October. We're here in Lochaline, and we've got loads of other things going on. Sorry, somebody's trying to call me. Just happy Good Friday.
Enjoy.
And have a wonderful Easter, and we will talk to you soon.